Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is 1 hour advanced English listening practice.
And the second part is advanced vocabulary learning from this discussion.
So if you've ever found yourself just acing every single grammar test, mastering irregular verbs, you've got this huge vocabulary, and then you walk into a real-life conversation and it just sounds like a blur of noise. Well, this deep dive is for you.
That moment. We all know it.
That exact moment, that frustrating, really intense struggle when native speakers are just talking at their normal speed. That is the universal gap we are here to bridge today.
It really is a gap.
Yeah.
Because you're essentially dealing with two different versions of the language. There's classroom English.
Right. Perfect. Enunciated.
Exactly. And then there's real-world English, where the rules are all about efficiency and flow, not perfection. Textbooks give you words as separate blocks. Real speech is like a continuous river of sound.
A river of sound. I like that. So our mission today is pretty clear. We're treating this session as an intensive course in advanced English listening practice. We're taking a huge, comprehensive guide to understanding authentic English, and we're just condensing it all into actionable insights for you.
And that ties right into the second part, the advanced vocabulary learning. Because it's not just about sounds changing. It's about how words and phrases take on new meanings, new social functions, in the middle of a real conversation.
So let's jump right in. Let's get to the core of it. The single biggest reason that everyday English sounds so incredibly different. Why does a perfectly normal question like, how are you doing today, so often become something that sounds more like, how you doing today?
That transformation is all thanks to one single concept, connected speech. It is, and I'm not exaggerating, the linguistic engine of fluency. It's just the natural way sounds blend together across word boundaries. If you don't get a handle on it, you'll always feel like you're one step behind the conversation.
Okay, so let's unpack that, because I think a lot of learners hear it and their first thought is, wow, that's just lazy speaking, or, bad articulation.
That's a really crucial distinction to make right away. It is not lazy. It's efficient. Think about it from a physical standpoint. Your vocal tract, your mouth, your tongue, they all naturally seek the path of least resistance.
Okay.
So maintaining a continuous stream of air and just blending sounds together is physically way easier and faster than stopping and starting for every single word.
So it's not random. There are rules to this efficiency.
Absolutely. There are very specific phonetic rules governing these changes. Once you start recognizing the patterns, your brain doesn't have to work as hard.
So you stop listening for the full separate word and you start anticipating the transformation.
That's it. The moment your brain stops trying to hear, what are you? And instead hears the single sound chunk, whatcha, your processing speed just skyrockets.
Okay, let's run through a few more of those transformations, just to really hammer home how dramatic these everyday changes are. We just mentioned what are you going to do, turning into what you going to do. Can you break down the mechanics of that one again for us?
So you've got two things happening. First, that initial blend, what, followed by you.
Yeah.
The T sound at the end of what and the Y sound at the start of you, they merge.
Through a process called assimilation, right?
Precisely. That T plus Y combination creates a chi sound, so you get whatcha. Then, the second part is maybe the most important reduction in all of English.
Gonna.
Gonna. The phrase going to is almost never pronounced fully in conversation. It reduces to gonna. It's not optional. If you want to understand fluent speech, you have to hear gonna as the future marker.
What about something even simpler, like, I don't know?
Classic example. This one's about elision, which is just dropping a sound entirely. The T in don't often just vanishes.
So you're left with dunno.
I know. The consonant cluster DNT is just too clunky to say at speed, so it gets simplified.
Right. And you see this with polite commands, too. Let me see. Let me see.
Give me a minute instead of give me a minute.
Yeah.
And in those cases, you'll notice the T or the V sound just disappears. The M or N sounds kind of take over and carry the rhythm themselves. These phrases are so common, they basically become single words in our minds.
I think my favorite is, did you eat yet? It turns into something that sounds completely alien if you're not ready for it. Jet yet.
Huh, yes. That's that yi assimilation again, or palatalization at its finest. The dead sound from dead hits the Y sound from you, and they combine to make a hard J sound.
So, didja.
Didja. And once you know that rule, that D plus Y often makes a J sound, you suddenly start hearing kuja and woodja everywhere. It stops being confusing.
And just to cover all our bases, let's talk about the most extreme one we mentioned. I am going to collapsing all the way down to
That's the far end of the spectrum for sure. So you start with 4 words. I am going to.
Then the contraction, I'm going to.
Then the common reduction, I'm gonna. And then in really casual, fast speech, especially in some American dialects, that becomes Imma. The G and the T are just completely gone. So if you're not prepared for someone to say, Immy, get a coffee, you will completely miss what they intend to do.
So connected speech is the what of all this, but the why of it, as you said, is about efficiency, which brings us to rhythm.
Yes, this is paramount. English is a stress-timed language, and this principle explains almost everything about why we reduce words.
And this is a huge mental shift for a lot of learners, right? Especially if their first language is syllable timed, like Spanish or French, when every syllable gets roughly the same amount of time.
The profound shift. In a syllable-timed language, the rhythm is very even, like a metronome. Tick, 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 tick.
But English isn't like that.
Not at all. English is like a wave. It has peaks and troughs. We try to keep the time between the stressed syllables, the peaks, roughly equal.
Okay, so to keep that beat, you have to rush through the words in between.
You have to rush, you have to squash them, you have to reduce them. Let's use that classic example because it's so clear. I went to the store to buy some bread and milk.
The important words there are obviously store, bread, and milk.
Right. Those are the lexical words, the content words. They carry the meaning, they get the stress. We say them louder, more clearly with full vowels.
And everything else.
Everything else. I went to buy some, and those are function words, grammar words. They're unstressed, rushed, and their vowels usually reduce to that weak neutral schwa sound, or they just disappear.
So you sacrifice the grammar words for the rhythm.
You have to. If you didn't, the rhythm would be broken. Imagine trying to say that sentence to a beat. You'd hit the beat on store, bread, milk. To make that work, you have to fly through to buy some.
So it sounds more like, I went to the store to buy bread and milk.
That's a perfect representation of it. It's an intentional musical compression. And the key insight for you, the listener, is to stop trying to hear every single word. Focus your energy on the stressed words. That's where the meaning is.
Okay, that's a great point, but let's test it. What about a more complex formal sentence? Does this principle still hold up, or does it make things impossible to understand?
That's a very fair question. Let's try one. How about the manager is looking for the contract that was signed this morning?
Wow, okay, yeah, if you hear that at full speed, you might catch manager and contract and just get totally lost in the middle part.
So where would the rhythm peaks be?
On the content. So manager, looking, contract, signed, and morning.
Exactly. And all the little function words in between get squeezed. Is, for, the, that was. So what you'd actually hear might sound something like, the manager's looking for the contract that was signed this morning.
That part between contract and signed, that was, becomes that was. It's incredibly fast.
It is. And you have to anticipate that. You have to know that prepositions and articles are going to be reduced.
Yes.
Stop trying to hear them fully pronounced. Put your mental energy into catching the nouns and the main verbs.
It's a total shift in listening strategy. You're not listening syllable by syllable. You're listening for the peaks in the wave.
Once you make that shift, I promise you, the entire sound of spoken English will change for you. It will start to make sense.
Okay, let's put this theory into practice. Let's take what we know about connected speech and rhythm and apply it to some real-world scenarios. This is where we can really see textbook formality just completely evaporate.
Right, and this is where our advanced vocabulary learning comes in too. Because it's not just about sounds, it's about the specific phrases people choose to use in these situations.
Let's start with scenario A, the cafe order. A super common, really high-speed interaction. So the textbook might teach you to say, I would like to have a medium black coffee, please.
Which no one has said, probably ever.
Right. And the barista probably wouldn't say, good morning, what would you like to order today?
You know, the whole thing is driven by speed. The barista is more likely to just lean in and say, hey, what can I get you?
There it is, getcha, that get you blend we talked about.
And the customer's response is just as direct. Yeah, can I get a medium drip, please?
Can I get, that phrase is huge, isn't it?
It's the standard, especially in North America. It means I want to purchase. It's not a question about ability. You have to recognize can I get as a statement of intent.
And even the word choice, drip, not filtered coffee. It's the insider shorthand.
Exactly. And then the back and forth about the details is just as fast. The barista might say, room for cream. with a rising intonation. Not the full sentence, do you need room for cream?
And the customer's rejection. Instead of, no, that is all, you'll hear.
Nah, that's it.
Yeah.
That nah is so important. It's a compressed, super casual no that you need to recognize instantly.
And the final hurdle, the price. My goodness. Someone says $5.25.
And the learner freezes because they were listening for $5.25.
Right.
When people quote prices or times, the units are almost always dropped. 1030 is 1030. 240 is $2.40. Your brain has to supply the context dollars, minutes instantly.
Okay, let's shift gears. Scenario B. A casual catch-up between two friends. This is where the idiomatic language really comes out to play. Let's say Jake and Mike run into each other.
And this is often the hardest scenario for advanced learners. They might know all the individual words, but the phrases are prepackaged. Jake might say, Mike, long time no see.
You can't analyze the grammar of long time no see. It's a fossilized greeting. You just have to know it as a single chunk, meaning we haven't seen each other in a while.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And Mike's response to, how have you been, might be, same old, same old.
Same old, same old. What does that really convey?
It's a polite, neutral way to say nothing new or exciting has happened. It effectively closes that line of questioning. You wouldn't use it in a formal setting. It's purely for casual chat.
Then Jake says, work's been crazy busy lately. And Mike replies, tell me about it. I've been swamped too. Let's zoom in on swamped.
Swamped is a fantastic piece of vocabulary. It means completely overloaded, submerged in work, like you're literally in a swamp. It's much stronger than just busy. It implies stress.
And phrase Mike uses, tell me about it. This is a classic trap.
A huge trap. It has nothing to do with wanting more information. It's an emphatic agreement marker. It means I understand completely and I feel the same way. It's a way of showing empathy.
Okay, then the conversation shifts to making plans. We should hang out soon. Just shoot me a text whenever.
Shoot me a text. Again, very active, casual language. It means send me a text message. The word shoot implies speed and directness.
Yeah.
Much more common than please send me a message.
And they end with, great running into you.
Which is the standard polite formula for ending an unplanned meeting. It's another one of those set phrases you should learn as a single unit. Great running into you.
Okay, one more quick one. Scenario C, asking for directions. The formality drops so fast, even with a stranger.
The textbook might say, excuse me, could you please tell me how to get to the library?
But in reality,
it's more like, hey, sorry to bother you. Do you know where the library is? The opener is faster, more direct. Sorry to bother you. Acknowledges the interruption. And the question is framed as a simple knowledge check. Do you know?
And then the directions themselves are full of slang.
Oh, yeah. Instead of continue straight, you'll hear, go straight down this road for like 2 blocks. That down is just a colloquial add-on.
And the actual turns.
In American English especially, you'll hear hang a right or hang a left instead of just turn right. It's a very common, very casual instruction.
And the timing and distances are never exact.
Never. It's always softened. It's about a 5-minute walk it's like 5 minutes, tops. That filler word like signals it's an approximation. And tops is crucial. It means at the absolute maximum.
So in every one of these scenarios, it's a dual challenge. You have to decode the reduced sounds and you have to translate the idiomatic phrases.
And you have to do it all in real time. So now we need to dig a little deeper, moving from seeing these reductions in action to really understanding the mechanics behind them. This helps your brain move from reacting to anticipating.
Right. It's about moving from just being confused to actual pattern recognition.
Let's start with what we'll call reduction group 1, future and obligation. These are some of the most frequently reduced grammatical structures. We've already touched on going to, becoming, gonna. But I just want to stress the frequency. You will almost never hear the full going to in rapid speech. Your default expectation must be gonna.
And what about want to?
That predictably reduces to wanna. The T from want and the T from to just merge into one, I want to go.
But there's a rule there, isn't there? It doesn't always happen.
A very important rule. It only happens when want is followed directly by the infinitive to. You can say, I want to eat, but you can't say, I want a pizza. You have to say, I want a pizza. Knowing when the reduction applies is key.
Okay, what about obligation? Words like have to or have got to.
Both of those very commonly collapse into gotta, or sometimes hafta.
I gotta go.
We have to finish this. Notice in hafta, the voiced E sound in have becomes a voiceless F sound because of the T that follows. It's easier to say.
And with gotta, it's like the have just disappears from have got to.
It often does. The have-got structure is just an emphatic form anyway, so in casual speech, the have gets dropped, leaving got to, which then contracts to gotta.
Okay, let's move on to reduction group 2, the you transformation. This is where that assimilation process really shines.
It really does. So the core rule is that when a word ending in a dit sound is followed by you, the D and the Y sounds merge to create a J sound.
Which is why did you becomes didja.
Didja, coulda, woulda. You'll hear them constantly in questions. Could you pass the salt?
And the same thing happens with the T sound.
Yes, a T sound followed by a guy sound creates a chi sound. So don't you think so? Don't you think so?
And our favorite from earlier, what are you, becomes whatcha.
What you're doing. It's just a quintessential example.
And the ultimate form of this has to be the word gotcha.
Gotcha. It's so efficient it stands in for I gotcha, but its real meaning in conversation is usually I understand or I see your point. Recognizing gotcha instantly is a huge step forward.
Okay, let's tackle a really tricky one. Reduction group 3, the and have pitfall. This causes so much confusion.
A massive amount of confusion because the reduced sounds are phonetically identical. The whole problem starts with the word of.
It's a function word, so it's almost never stressed.
Right, so it reduces down to a very weak schwa sound, basically an ah sound.
So a cup of coffee becomes a cup of coffee.
Kind of becomes kind of, out of becomes out. A lot of becomes a lotta. You have to train your ear to hear that little sound and know that it means of.
And this is what creates that famous confusion with past modal verbs.
This is the big one. So the correct written forms are could have, would have, should have.
When we speak, we contract them. Could, would've, should've.
And when you say those contractions quickly, could've sounds exactly like could've. The I've sound and the reduced of sound are identical.
Which is why so many native speakers make the mistake of writing I should have known. Their ear is telling them it's of.
Exactly. And this is a perfect example of where you, the listener, have to rely on grammatical context, not just the sound. If you hear that sound, you have to know that grammatically, they're talking about a past possibility, so it must be would have. You use your grammar knowledge to resolve the phonetic ambiguity.
Okay, last group. Reduction group 4. Pronoun loss and the glottal stop.
These are a little subtler, but just as important. Let's start with the word them.
The sound is dropped, right?
As the sound requires a bit of effort, so in unstressed positions, it's often dropped, leaving just them. Tell them I'm on my way. You have to recognize them as them.
And we also see the disappearing H.
Oh, all the time. In unstressed pronouns like him or her, that initial H sound just vanishes. Did you see him? You see him. Becomes I told her.
It's just another efficiency mechanism.
It saves the speaker the little puff of air required for the H sound.
Okay, finally, let's talk about the glottal stop. What is it exactly?
The glottal stop is basically a tiny pause or a catch in your throat that replaces a T sound. Instead of pronouncing the T with your tongue, you just briefly stop the airflow in your glottis.
You swallow the T.
That's a perfect way to describe it. You swallow it. So the word button isn't pronounced butt-ton, it's bjorn. Water in some British accents isn't water or wolder, it's war.
So if you're listening for a clear T sound and you hear that little pause instead, your brain can get thrown off.
It creates a processing lag. And in a fast conversation, that lag is enough for you to get lost. The trick is to train your ear to recognize that little catch in the throat as the letter T.
So we've covered the foundation of sound. Now let's build on that with a toolkit for social interaction. Because real fluency isn't just about understanding, it's about responding quickly and naturally.
This is where that advanced vocabulary learning really pays off. You're not just learning words, you're learning pre-packaged social tools.
Let's start with Toolkit A. High-frequency agreement and disagreement. How do we signal that we're on the same page fast?
The simplest ways are single-word intensifiers. Totally. Absolutely. For sure. They're quick, they're clear, they're efficient.
What about some more layered phrases? We mentioned tell me about it. How about you can say that again?
You can say that again is a great one. It's a strong, often humorous way to say I agree 100%. Another really useful one is I hear ya. It's more empathetic. It means I understand your point or your frustration.
Now for the tricky part, disagreement. In English, just saying, no, I disagree can sound really blunt.
It can sound very confrontational. So we cushion it.
Yeah.
We use phrases that acknowledge the other person's point first. I see what you're saying, but, or That's a good point, although...
It maintains the social connection before you introduce your counterpoint.
Exactly.
Okay, and we have to talk about the most confusing phrase of all.
Yes. The great yeah, no. Let me be crystal clear. If you hear someone say yeah, no, the answer is and no.
The yeah is just a softener.
It's just a softener. It's like saying, yeah, I acknowledge your question before immediately rejecting it with no. If someone asked, did you like that movie? And the reply is, yeah, no, it was awful. The meaning is completely negative. You cannot get tripped up by that initial yeah.
Got it. Okay, toolkit B, expressions of surprise and confusion.
So beyond the simple no way
Yeah.
or are you for real, now we have these great idiomatic expressions that are not literal at all.
You're talking about shut up and get out.
Exactly. Shut up, get out, or get out of here. In almost any casual conversation, these are not commands. They are pure expressions of disbelief or astonishment.
So if a friend tells me they won the lottery and I say shut up, I'm not telling them to be quiet.
No, you're expressing your total amazement. The tone of voice is everything. If they're smiling and their tone is high-pitched, it's idiomatic.
And if you genuinely don't know something, what are some good alternatives to, I don't know?
A great casual one is, beats me. It's quick and means I have absolutely no idea. Or, if you want to be a bit more humble about it, your guess is as good as mine.
Okay, final toolkit. Toolkit C, conversation management. These are phrases to keep the conversation flowing smoothly.
These are so important for fluency. They show you can manage the social side of talking. For example, buying time when you need a second to think.
Instead of just silence.
Right. Use fillers like, let me think. Or, it's a good question. How do I put this? Another great one is, the thing is, it signals you're about to introduce a complication or a deeper point, and it buys you a few seconds.
And what about ending a conversation? It can be so awkward.
You need verbal exit ramps. Don't wait for a natural conclusion. You have to create it. Start with a transition word like anyway or well, and then speak your intention. Anyway, I should get going. Or, well, I got to run.
And then you finish with a warm closing.
For sure. It was great catching up. Or the super efficient cut you later. Having these phrases automated frees up so much mental energy. All right, so all this theory is great, but it's useless unless you put it into practice. We need to talk about active, targeted ear training. Passive listening is not enough for an advanced learner.
You have to force your brain to rewire itself to hear these new patterns. So we've got some specific, actionable exercises for you.
Let's start with exercise 1, the shadowing technique. In my opinion, this is the single most effective exercise you can do.
Okay, so walk us through the process. What exactly is shadowing?
You need a short audio clip, 30 seconds to 2 minutes with the perfect transcript. First, just listen to it. Then listen again while reading the transcript. Find all the connected speech and reductions. Then comes the shadowing part. You play the audio, and you speak at the exact same time as the speaker. You try to be their echo, their shadow. You match their speed, their rhythm, their intonation, everything.
So you're not just repeating after them, you're speaking with them.
Simultaneously. And if they say, what you going to do, you have to force your mouth and say, what you going to do. Not the slow textbook version.
What happens if you fall behind?
You keep going. Don't stop. The goal isn't perfect accuracy at first. It's matching the rhythm and flow. You're building muscle memory. If you can physically produce the reduced sound, your ear will recognize it instantly.
Okay, exercise 2, the gap fill challenge. It sounds like a diagnostic tool.
It is. It's basically strategic dictation. Listen to a short clip 3 times and write down every single word you hear. Then compare what you wrote to the official transcript.
And the gaps or mistakes are your weak spots.
Precisely. You stop saying, I don't understand fast English, and you start saying, I consistently miss the of reduction. It makes the problem solvable.
I like that. Okay, exercise 3, speed variation training.
This is a great way to recalibrate your brain. Take a video on YouTube or another platform with speed controls. Watch for a few minutes at 0.75x speed. Really focus on the sounds. Then jump immediately to 1.25x speed for a minute. It'll feel way too fast. It's meant to be uncomfortable. It forces your brain to process information at a higher rate.
And the magic happens when you go back to normal speed.
Yes. You switch it back to 1.0x speed, and suddenly it will feel noticeably slower and much more manageable. You've expanded your auditory bandwidth.
And what about a daily routine? How can someone fit this in?
Consistency beats intensity every time. 15 to 30 minutes a day is perfect. Maybe listen to a podcast on your commute. That's passive exposure to rhythm. Then for active practice, spend 10 minutes watching a short video clip, first with subtitles, then without.
And then finish with 10 or 15 minutes of intense shadowing practice.
That combination of passive exposure, active analysis, and production practice is the fastest way to improve. And make sure you choose the right content. Start with something clear, like an animated show, and work your way up to faster sitcoms or documentaries.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the rules of fast English, but we have to address the elephant in the room. Accents. The rules change depending on where the speaker is from.
This is so important. True mastery means being able to handle diversity. You might master American English reductions and then feel totally lost listening to someone from Scotland.
So let's do a quick breakdown of the key phonetic differences in the three major accent families. Let's start with American English, or AE.
The biggest tell for AE is the rhotic R. The R sound is pronounced clearly after vowels. In the word car, or hard, you hear the R. And crucially for listening, AE has the flapped TAT sound between two vowels, often turns into a soft on sound. So water becomes waiter, better becomes better. That's a huge phonetic clue.
What about the vowels?
The A sound in words like dance or bath is usually the flat A, like in the word cat.
Okay, now let's contrast that with British English, or B.
BE is generally non-rhotic. That R sound after a vowel is dropped, so car sounds more like ka.
And we talked about the glottal stop.
Yes, it's much more common in many BE accents, often replacing the T sound. Better might be pronounced beer, with that little catch in the throat.
And the A vowel.
The A in dance, or bath, is a broader ah sound, like the A in father. That vowel sound is one of the biggest giveaways.
And finally, Australian English, AU, which has that really distinctive intonation.
It does. Australian English often uses a rising intonation at the end of statements, which can make them sound like questions to other English speakers.
And the vowels are different again.
Yes, they tend to be a bit more closed and centralized. A classic example is the A sound in a word like day can sound a bit more like die.
And the slang is a whole other vocabulary list.
You gotta know it. Arvo for afternoon, brekkie for breakfast. And the standard greeting is often, how you going? Instead of, how are you?
Okay, let's wrap up this section with some troubleshooting for common challenges.
The first big one. I get lost in long conversations.
What's the solution?
Stop trying to catch every word. Focus only on the key stressed words and the overall context. And practice asking for clarification naturally. Just say, sorry, what was that last part? Don't panic.
Okay, challenge number 2. I can't catch every single word and it frustrates me.
You have to accept that you don't need to. You only need about 70–80% comprehension to follow the general meaning. The goal is to understand the message, not to transcribe the sentence in your head.
And the final one, I can't respond quickly enough. I understand, but I'm too slow.
This is an output problem, not an input problem. The solution is twofold. 1, more shadowing practice to build your own production speed. And 2, memorize and automate those conversation management phrases. Use, let me think, to buy yourself time to formulate your real answer.
So this deep dive into advanced English listening practice and advanced vocabulary learning has, I hope, given you a really clear roadmap. The difference between feeling comfortable and feeling totally overwhelmed isn't about how many words you know.
It's about understanding the mechanics, the predictable, efficient mechanics of connected speech.
The key takeaway really is to stop fearing the speed and start recognizing the patterns.
Exactly. All those sounds that used to confuse you, the gonna, the wanna, the gotcha, they aren't mistakes. They're features. They're the sounds of natural, fluent English. And please, be patient with yourself. Training your ear is literally rewiring your brain. It takes time, it takes consistent practice, but one day you'll be in a fast conversation and you'll suddenly realize you're not translating anymore. You're just understanding.
That click moment, it's what we're all working towards.
And it is guaranteed to happen if you stick with the active practice routines we've talked about.
So we really encourage you to start today. Just pick one technique. Maybe the shadowing exercise. Find a 1-minute clip and give it a try. The future you, the one who's navigating conversations without missing a beat, will be so grateful that you started right now. If you found this analysis helpful for your learning journey and you want more deep dives like this, we'd love it if you would like, share, and subscribe to this channel.
It really helps us keep making this content for you.
Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you on the next deep dive. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today we are doing a deep dive into advanced vocabulary, specifically the vocabulary you need to master real-world English.
That's right. Our mission today is, it's all about transformation. We've got a list here of 31 keywords.
31. And these aren't just random words. These are terms that really describe how you master English, not just what it is.
Exactly. We're not just here to give you definitions. We want to move these words from, something you just passively recognize into your active, everyday speaking repertoire.
So this is kind of a shortcut, in a way. We're giving you the language to talk about your own learning journey, the challenges, the strategies, all of it.
Right. So you're not just well-informed about the language, but you can also be incredibly well-spoken about the process itself.
Okay, so let's set the stage. We pulled these words from material that's all about training your ear for that authentic, fast, everyday English.
And that's the core of it. Understanding why real-world English sounds so different.
So we've structured this around 4 main ideas. First, we're going to talk about the challenges that real-world speech presents, the big ones.
Then we'll get into the mindsets and sort of the cognitive skills you're going to need.
Right. And after that, we'll dive into the practical stuff, active learning strategies. And finally, we'll unpack some of the specific linguistic details that make native speech so, distinctive.
And we really want this to be dynamic. The goal here is to break down what can feel like a huge, overwhelming challenge into, manageable and actionable insights.
Okay. Let's close that gap between the textbook and the street. Let's jump right into segment 1, the perception gap and overcoming difficulty. So when a learner, even a really good one, first runs into native speech at full speed, that immediate reaction, it's often a pretty powerful one. Let's start with our first word, frustration. We all know what frustration feels like, but what does it mean in this specific acoustic context?
Well, in this context, frustration is that that specific mental annoyance that happens when your brain expects one sound pattern, but it gets something totally different.
Ah, okay.
It's that deep feeling of exasperation, when the clean audio you learn from just doesn't match the messy reality of connected speech. Your expectations are just completely unmet.
That's a really key distinction. It's not just, I don't know that word. It's more like, I'm sure I know that word, but I can't hear it anywhere.
Yes.
I remember reading the story about a student, and her frustration just kept growing because she realized native speakers weren't clearly saying the ed endings on past tense verbs that she'd spent months memorizing.
And that kind of thing, that unresolved effort, it creates what you could call cognitive friction. If you're constantly fighting to understand rapid, reduced speech, that feeling of dissatisfaction, it just builds and builds.
So it's natural then.
Oh, absolutely. And acknowledging that this specific kind of frustration is a totally valid response is really the first step toward building the persistence you need to get past it.
And a big part of what causes that intense frustration is the sheer scale of the challenge, right?
Yeah.
Which brings us to our next word. Massive.
Yes, massive.
Yeah.
Something enormous, colossal. And here, we really need to acknowledge the massive difference, this gigantic, substantial gap that exists between the two versions of English.
The classroom version versus the real-world version.
Exactly. The clean, slow, isolated word version you're taught, and then the dynamic, messy, rapid-fire version you actually hear. The scale of that difference can feel just immense at first.
I sometimes think of it like this. Textbooks teach you English as if it's a neat row of brick houses, all perfectly separated.
An analogy.
But real-world English is like a massive apartment block where all the walls have collapsed into each other. The boundaries are just gone.
And if you try to use the tools designed for that neat row of houses on this collapsed block,
your whole system will just crash. It's a massive cognitive shift you have to make.
It is. And that collapse of boundaries, it's rooted in a very specific, observable reality, which is our next word, phenomenon.
A phenomenon. So an occurrence, an event, something you can actually observe.
Right. And the central phenomena we have to grapple with here is connected speech. This isn't some rare exception. It is the absolute rule of everyday English.
It's this linguistic marvel of how native speakers blend, reduce, and even drop sounds entirely.
So if you're listening for every single distinct word boundary, you are fundamentally misunderstanding this acoustic phenomenon.
It's like gravity.
How so?
Well, gravity is a consistent force, right? Connected speech is a consistent linguistic force. Once you realize that words are going to blend, that what are you doing will almost always become something like, what are you doing? it stops being a random mistake.
And it becomes a predictable phenomenon, something you can actually study systematically.
Exactly. But that phenomenon immediately creates the main obstacle, a barrier, a hurdle that blocks your progress.
And from what we've seen, connected speech is consistently cited as the single biggest obstacle for advanced learners trying to improve their real-world comprehension.
It's not about vocabulary, then.
Not primarily. It's acoustic processing. It's a very real barrier because your brain is trying to map sounds that don't exist in isolation onto words you probably know very well.
It's so important to identify that specific impediment. You know, if a marathon runner has a bad knee, that's their obstacle. They don't just try to run faster, they deal with the knee first.
That's a great point. The English learner needs to start focusing only on grammar and start actively training their ear to handle this specific obstacle, the hurdle of sound blending and reduction.
And to get over that hurdle, the sounds themselves have to change in your mind, which brings us to transform.
To transform, yes. To change completely in form in nature, to alter, to reshape.
So if you hear a phrase like, I'm going to eat now, that phrase transforms completely when it's spoken quickly.
Becomes, I'm going to eat now. The original sounds have been altered, reshaped, completely metamorphosed into something new.
So it's not just that the speaker is talking fast. The actual acoustic nature of the phrase has been revolutionized.
And this transformation, this metamorphosis, it happens constantly in native speech. Did you eat? Transforms into, did ya eat? What do you want? Becomes, what do you want?
So your brain has to learn to accept the whole transformed phrase as a new sound unit.
Right. Instead of desperately trying to pick out the individual words, which just leads you right back to that initial frustration we talked about.
And because these phrases are always transforming, it fundamentally changes how a listener perceives the speech. And perceive is our next word.
To perceive. To become aware of something through your senses, to recognize it, to discern it.
And this is such a critical point. Learners often perceive natural speech as being way too fast.
They do. And it's precisely because they're trying to process the original isolated forms of the words, not the transformed connected patterns they're actually hearing.
So their brain is struggling to find word boundaries that just aren't there in the stream of sound.
Exactly. So that feeling of speed is a perceived reality, not necessarily a physical one.
Yeah.
We have to shift how the brain interprets that acoustic input.
We need to help it recognize and discern these new transformed sound units automatically.
Instead of relying on that slow, conscious effort of trying to break the sound stream back down into separate words.
So just to recap this first segment, the path is pretty clear. The massive frustration is caused by this pervasive phenomenon of connected speech.
Which acts as the main obstacle.
Right. And this obstacle forces the acoustic sounds to transform, which ultimately leads the untrained ear to falsely perceive the speech as just being too fast.
That's a powerful cycle.
Yeah.
And it's one that really requires a targeted cognitive solution, not just more vocabulary flashcards.
That definitely sets a high bar. It's clear we need more than just definitions. We need a whole new mindset, which I think leads us perfectly into segment 2. Okay, moving into segment 2. We're now looking at the mindset, the effort, and the cognitive skills you need to bridge that acoustic gap. And we have to start with the end goal, comprehension.
Comprehension, yes. The mental grasp of facts and meanings, the ability to interpret information accurately, it's understanding, insight, cognition.
Now, you can often improve your reading comprehension by just looking up words you don't know. But listening comprehension is a different beast, isn't it?
It's completely different because it demands instantaneous processing speed. That time pressure is everything.
You need a level of insight where you're grasping complex ideas within milliseconds of hearing them. It's no wonder people say listening comprehension is the hardest skill.
It is. It combines vocabulary, grammar, and that immediate acoustic processing, all under the stress of real-time speed. You can't just pause a real conversation while your brain catches up.
You need that instant comprehension.
Right. And while building vocabulary helps your general understanding, only dedicated ear training can build the cognitive speed you need for that real-time interpretation.
So if that's the goal, that immediate real-time comprehension, then understanding the mechanics of native speech is absolutely crucial.
Yes, crucial. Something of decisive importance, vital, essential.
And understanding those connected speech patterns we just talked about is crucial for any real-world application.
Think about the cognitive cost here. If you are constantly struggling with the rhythm and the transformation of sounds, your brain is using a huge amount of its processing power. maybe 80% just to decrypt the audio,
Wow, 80%.
which leaves you with only 20% to actually process the meaning.
That 80-20 split is staggering. If you're using all that crucial mental energy just to figure out what sounds were made, you completely miss the nuance, the tone, the implication, the context.
And in a high-stakes situation like a job interview or a business negotiation, those first few minutes are absolutely crucial for setting the tone. You can't afford to waste all that mental capacity on just decoding sounds.
So, given that, the approach you take has to be comprehensive.
Comprehensive, meaning complete and thorough, all-inclusive, exhaustive, detailed.
You can't just cherry pick. You can't just drill verb tenses and hope for the best. Mastery requires a comprehensive, all-encompassing approach that gives real substantial effort to pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation.
It means you have to analyze every facet of the language. And you have to recognize that reading and listening are two profoundly different skills that require two very different training programs.
A comprehensive strategy makes sure you're not ignoring those foundational acoustic elements.
Absolutely. A fully detailed approach, one that covers all the important points, is the only way you can achieve that crucial real-time comprehension. Otherwise, you end up with, very sophisticated reading skills, but your listening skills are still at a basic level.
So we've laid out the cognitive needs. Immediate comprehension is the crucial goal, and that requires a comprehensive strategy. But let's be real about the timeline here. This isn't a quick fix. It's gradual.
Yes, gradual, taking place slowly, by degrees, happening in stages over time, steady, progressive, incremental. This is maybe the hardest truth for learners to accept.
That training your ear for these new sound patterns is a gradual process.
It's just like building muscle memory.
I often make the comparison to learning a musical instrument. You don't master the piano in a week, even if you practice 10 hours a day.
You can't. The neural pathways required for those complex finger movements, or in this case for instant acoustic mapping, they have to be built slowly, incrementally, steadily.
You're not going to wake up fluent tomorrow. And just recognizing that your improvement will be progressive and gradual, that helps manage your expectations, and it really helps to diffuse that initial wave of frustration we talked about.
And that recognition that it's a slow, steady progression is what allows you to cultivate persistence.
Our next word, persistence. Continuing firmly in a course of action despite difficulty. Perseverance, resolve, tenacity.
And this ties directly back to that initial feeling of frustration. Learning a language is full of setbacks. It's inevitable. And it takes real resolve, real stamina to push past them.
You have to find the tenacity to do the same kinds of listening practice day after day, knowing that the progress you're making is almost invisible on a daily basis.
It's like treating a machine learning algorithm. You feed it similar data over and over again until its recognition improves. Your brain needs that same persistent, determined input.
It's that perseverance, that refusal to quit when a conversation feels totally overwhelming, that eventually pays off.
And allows you to follow a rapid-fire exchange effortlessly.
And as you move past that constant conscious decoding, that moment when you stop analyzing every sound and just start understanding, that's when you unlock the power of intuition.
Intuition. The ability to understand something instinctively without conscious reasoning. That gut feeling, that sixth sense.
This really is the hallmark of advanced fluency, isn't it?
It is. You're no longer thinking, wait, did that speaker use the right preposition? You just instinctively know if a sentence feels right or wrong. The goal is to bypass the conscious analytical part of your brain and let the fast intuitive system take over.
So how do you train that gut feeling?
Well, things like prediction games are fantastic for this. Even though English sentence structures can be complex, they still follow general patterns.
So by constantly guessing what word or phrase is coming next.
You're training your intuition to anticipate those structures. Your listening becomes proactive instead of reactive. Trusting your intuition is a real sign that all those hours of effort have paid off, transforming conscious work into seamless, innate knowledge.
Okay, so this segment gives us a clear cognitive roadmap. Success demands persistence in a gradual process. That leads toward comprehensive comprehension, and ultimately, it gives you the gift of linguistic intuition.
That's the path.
Now, let's talk about how to actually apply that persistence. What does that look like in practice? So we know we need to be persistent, but how do we apply that effort? We can't just do it randomly. We need to be strategically minded.
Yes, strategically. Acting in a calculated way to achieve a long-term goal. purposefully, methodically. Language learning can't just be random consumption.
You have to plan your moves like a chess master.
You do. You have to ensure that every piece of listening practice you do serves a specific, defined objective. And a critical part of that is content selection.
You have to immerse yourself strategically.
Right. You need to pick content that you're interested in, of course, but that also aligns with your goal. If your goal is to practice fast, informal speech, then watching a dense academic lecture might be enjoyable, but it's not a strategic choice for that specific goal.
You need to methodically choose material that has the exact acoustic phenomena you're trying to train for.
And that targeted approach means you have to act intentionally.
Intentionally, deliberately, on purpose, not by accident.
We always recommend that you expose yourself to a variety of English intentionally. That means consciously seeking out different accents, different topics, different speeds.
Because if you only ever listen to one type of, say, formal BBC English, you're settling into a very narrow style.
And the first time you encounter an American or a Scottish or an Australian speaker, it's going to throw you completely off. So that deliberate, conscious exposure is what ensures you're comfortable with diverse real-world forms of the language.
And what are we doing? Intentionally and strategically. We're trying to immerse ourselves.
To immerse, yes. To involve yourself deeply in an activity, to absorb it, get engrossed by it.
Immersion really is the accelerator. And while, moving to an English-speaking country is the classic example, you can create a really powerful immersion environment right where you are.
You can. It means involving yourself deeply in English content. Change your phone's language setting. Listen to English podcasts on topics you love, not just language learning podcasts. Try to think in English.
You have to plunge into the language until you're just completely surrounded by it.
And that active immersion, when it's done strategically, it maximizes your practice time. And one of the best ways to do that is by doing things simultaneously.
Happening at the same instant. Concurrently.
Exactly. And the shadowing technique is a perfect example here. Shadowing is when you repeat what you hear almost immediately after the native speaker says it.
And that improves your listening skills and your pronunciation simultaneously.
It does. It forces your mouth and your brain to work in unison to reproduce the rhythm and the intonation, not just the individual sounds. By hitting two key targets at the same time, you're getting so much more out of your practice.
Now, as you're doing all this practice, you're going to hit plateaus, moments where your processing speed feels slow or your confidence drops. When that happens, you need to recalibrate.
Recalibrate. To adjust, correct, or reset something. To reassess and modify.
I find speed variation training is so valuable for this. You can take a piece of audio you understand and listen to it first at 75% speed, then at 100%, then bump it up to 125%.
That exercise forces your brain to fine-tune and recalibrate its processing speed. And sometimes we also have to recalibrate our expectations, right?
Yeah.
We have to modify our internal settings to align with the fast, messy reality of native speech. It's a constant process of adjustment.
And that adjustment should happen progressively?
Yes, progressively, advancing gradually over time, step by step, incrementally.
Your training path needs to be built on incremental difficulty. You shouldn't jump from a 30-second audio clip to a 2-hour movie.
Yeah, or you'll just get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
You have to practice with progressively longer content to build up your listening stamina. Start with short clips, move incrementally to 10-minute talks, then maybe a full-length interview.
The complexity of the grammar and the speed of the delivery should increase step by step too. So you're always challenged but never completely swamped.
And the key to this entire system, the glue that holds it all together, is the word consistently.
Consistently. In a way that doesn't change over time, steadily, reliably.
This might be the single most crucial point for ear training. Consistency is so much more important than sheer intensity.
So an 8-hour study session once a month is not the way to go.
It's far less effective than a quick, reliable 15-minute practice session every single day. The brain needs that regular, steady input to build and strengthen those new neural pathways. It's the reliable, uniform effort that delivers real, long-term results.
And as this consistent strategic practice starts to take hold, it builds a really foundational asset for you, your repertoire.
A repertoire, a range of skills, techniques, or items that a person uses habitually.
And we're not just talking about a list of vocabulary words here. We're talking about functional language units, chunks.
Yes, you need to build a repertoire of ready-made phrases and idioms that you can pull out and use instantly without having to think about it.
Like a comedian with a repertoire of jokes, or a chef with a repertoire of recipes.
Exactly. For the language learner, this allows for quick, fluid responses in a conversation. And that's the real difference between just knowing a word and being able to actually use it effortlessly.
And you build that repertoire through constant exposure.
Exposure, contact with or familiarity with a subject, the experience of encountering something frequently.
Regular, high-quality exposure to native speakers in lots of different settings is just absolutely essential for developing your listening skills.
The more you experience the language in formal meetings, casual chats, different types of media, the broader your linguistic skill set becomes, and the more easily you start to recognize patterns and retrieve phrases from that growing repertoire.
So the strategy is this: learn strategically and intentionally. Seek deep immersion using techniques you practice simultaneously.
Be ready to recalibrate and make sure you're advancing progressively and, above all, consistently.
All to build your usable repertoire through constant, varied exposure. That really does feel like a practical manual for success.
It's the roadmap.
It is. Okay, so we have the mindset and the method. Now let's get a bit more technical. Let's dig into the fundamental linguistic quirks that make native speech sound so unique. On to segment 4. All right, in our final segment, we're looking at the specific terms that describe the sound, the structure, and the communication realities of real-world English. Let's start with a technical one. Rhotic.
Rhotic. This is a phonetic term, and it just refers to accents where the sound is pronounced before a consonant or at the end of a word.
So American English and Irish English would be good example.
Prominent examples, yes. In those accents, the R is clearly sounded in words like car and water.
Now, this is a huge point of confusion for learners, right? Because many are first exposed to non-rhotic English, like standard British English, where that R sound is dropped after a vowel.
It is. So if you've only ever trained with non-rhotic English, hearing an American speaker say the full R in teacher or better can be really jarring acoustically.
And it works the other way, too. A rhotic learner might struggle to hear the difference between car and ka in a non-rhotic accent. Understanding this distinction is just vital for broad comprehension.
And moving beyond just the individual sounds, we have to look at the flow and the melody of speech, which is intonation.
Intonation, the rise and fall of the voice when you speak. The pitch pattern.
The melody of speech, yeah. And it conveys meaning and emotion that go way beyond the words themselves.
Oh, intonation is absolutely critical. It can completely change the meaning of the exact same set of words.
It can.
You know, think about how a flat, neutral intonation can show certainty, but a rising intonation at the end of that same sentence can turn it into a question, even if the grammar is identical.
We came across the example of Australian English, which is known for its rising intonation at the end of statements. For an untrained ear, that can cause a lot of confusion. It can sound like the person is constantly asking questions.
Right. And beyond just questions and statements, intonation carries emotion, sarcasm, sincerity, excitement. You have to understand it for accurate comprehension to get the emotional context behind the words.
And tied directly to intonation and rhythm is our next word, interval.
An interval. A space of time between events, a pause or a span.
Linguistically speaking, English is a stress-timed language. What that means is that the time between the stressed syllables happens at roughly regular intervals.
And this is very different from syllable-timed languages, where every syllable gets more or less equal weight.
It's completely different. And this stress timing is the reason native speakers can sort of swallow the unstressed syllables. The brain's priority is to hit the next beat, the next stressed syllable, at the expected interval.
So you can think of English speech as a piece of music with a steady drum beat, and the words have to fit that beat.
That's a great way to see it. If a learner tries to process every single syllable as equally important, they'll miss the rhythm entirely, and the speech will just sound like a chaotic mess of sound. Understanding this timing interval lets you anticipate the important stress words and kind of ignore the reduced sounds in between.
Okay, let's move to some of the practical realities of communication. Let's talk about abbreviation.
Abbreviation, a shortened form of a word or phrase, a contraction, an acronym.
Culturally, using abbreviations and nicknames is a really distinctive feature of some dialects. Australian English is famous for it, right? Shortening almost every noun.
They are, but beyond just regional quirks, modern digital communication, texting, has introduced this massive and constantly changing number of new abbreviations into everyday language.
From texting acronyms to casual contractions in speech, you have to know these short forms to keep up with spontaneous conversation.
And that brings us to a really critical point that underlines why all this training is so necessary. Accommodate.
To accommodate, to adapt or adjust to suit a situation, to cater to someone.
And here's the hard truth. And I think it's one that deserves a moment of real reflection for learners.
Which is?
Native speakers, especially when they're in their own environment talking to each other, rarely accommodate their speech for non-native listeners.
They won't slow down for you.
Not usually. They won't simplify their vocabulary or stop using connected speech just because they realize you're a non-native speaker. They're focused on communicating effectively in their normal, standard way.
And that reality really underscores the crucial need for you, the learner, to train your ear for that authentic full speed. You can't rely on other people to adjust for you. The responsibility for comprehension really lies with the listener.
But hang on, is there a balance there? I mean, if you're a customer asking for help or you're in a professional setting, don't you have a right to ask someone to speak a little slower? Is it really true they never accommodate?
That's a fair point. Of course, individuals might accommodate out of politeness or, professional duty, but we're talking about the general acoustic environment. In a busy cafe, at a service counter, during a fast-paced group discussion, the overall speed isn't going to adjust.
And I think more importantly, if you have to ask them to slow down, you're already using up cognitive energy that should be going toward the actual task at hand.
So the goal is to get to a level where you don't even need to make that request.
That's it. We're training the brain for the default, non-accommodated environment.
And that lack of accommodation is why different accents and dialects get to keep their distinctive features.
Exactly. Distinctive. Characteristic of a person or thing, serving to distinguish it from others. Unique, notable.
Every accent, every region, even social groups, they all have distinctive features. A certain way of phrasing things, unique slang, a specific sound quality.
And the goal of that broad exposure we talked about earlier is to allow your brain to process these distinguishing features quickly without them causing you to pause and lose your place in the conversation.
And when you do run into those distinctive features or an unfamiliar word, which you will, the crucial skill you have to rely on is understanding the communication as contextual.
Contextual. Relating to or determined by the circumstances. Situational. Meaning is almost always context dependent.
Let's take the word pitch. If you hear someone say the pitch was terrible, how does your brain figure that out instantly?
Well, if you're at a business conference, it means the sales presentation was bad.
Right, if you're watching a soccer match.
It means the quality of the sales was poor.
And if you're a musician.
It's about the frequency of a note. The acoustic input is identical, but your brain uses contextual clues, the situation, the topic of discussion, to figure out the meaning in a split second.
So advanced listening depends on your ability to use that situational awareness to understand things, even unfamiliar words, during a fast conversation. If you only focus on the sound, you miss the context that unlocks the meaning.
And all of this training, the persistence, the strategic practice, understanding rhythm, it's all aimed at one ultimate goal: being able to operate effortlessly.
Effortlessly. Smoothly and easily, without any mental strain. The moment you can follow a rapid-fire conversation in a loud cafe effortlessly, without mentally translating or straining to hear every sound, that's when you know you've achieved mastery.
We want your language processing to be fluid and seamless, moving between topics, adapting to accents with ease, like a skilled dancer moving across the floor.
And finally, let's just revisit the scale of this challenge. Everyday English sounds dramatically different depending on the speaker and where they're from.
Dramatically, in a striking, noticeable, significant way.
The change from the English you might hear in, say, India to the English spoken in the north of England. It involves a dramatically different set of sounds, rhythms, and vocabulary.
And that substantial, striking variation requires that broad exposure and that continuous recalibration to handle the significant differences in pronunciation and cadence.
We have now meticulously covered all 31 words, from the initial psychological challenge of frustration all the way to the ultimate goal of operating effortlessly.
Armed with the knowledge of terms like rhotic and the understanding that practice must be applied consistently. #outro.
So, to synthesize the core loop we've kind of charted out for you, the advanced learner, it starts by acknowledging that initial frustration you feel when facing real-world speech.
And that becomes the motivation for sustained persistence.
Right, and this persistent, strategically applied effort allows you to recalibrate your processing speed and your phonetic decoding.
And that continuous adjustment leads to a comprehensive understanding of the language.
Ultimately granting you the ability to listen and speak effortlessly.
That synthesis really does define the entire journey. And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought that builds on everything we've talked about, especially the role of intuition.
We know intuition is that instinctive understanding, that gut feeling that bypasses slow, conscious reasoning. So if that's the goal, my question for you is, how can you intentionally design your daily learning environment to foster that instinctive understanding rather than just relying on conscious analysis?
That's a great question, and it means thinking about moving past simple transcription exercises and doing activities that force you to anticipate. You could try speed reading subtitles while you listen to native content, forcing your brain to process the meaning just ahead of the sound.
Oh, I like that.
Or start focusing on sentence prediction games. Every time you consciously choose an activity that requires pattern recognition instead of just grammatical analysis, you are intentionally training your intuition.
That shift from analysis to anticipation, that's where the effort becomes truly effective. We hope this deep dive has given you the advanced vocabulary and the tactical roadmap you need to approach your learning with renewed confidence and sophistication.
We really enjoyed exploring all these nuances with you today.
If you found these insights helpful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more deep dives into advanced English concepts and practical language mastery strategies. We'll catch you next time.